supervisor gets pulled over by
that we're still trying to get that setting ourselves. Otherwise, there's a little bit of an echo.
I don't know why we couldn't hear her. For public.
So we can take a break. All right, if CNET is all set, you're raising the police set, I will go ahead and call to order the Tuesday, February 20th, 2024 regular meeting of Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to announcements at this time. And under announcements, we have a recognition of Mr. Steve McDonald for his service as Township Road Superintendent. There was a party for Mr. McDonald, and a certificate of appreciation was framed and presented to him. So I just wanted to take a minute and read that so that we are all able to hear what was shared about Steve. Whereas Mr. Steve McDonald has been the Ferguson Township Road Superintendent and has served the local community for nearly 30 years, and whereas Steve in this role was responsible for the maintenance of over 95 miles of township roadway, leading the response to hundreds of winter storm events and other hazardous conditions, maintaining a fleet of over 85 vehicles and heavy equipment in a condition ready to respond, executing a curbside brush and leaf collection program enjoyed by residents, and otherwise serving the residents of Ferguson Township. And whereas Steve is a resident of Center County, residing in Port Matilda, Pennsylvania, he who has demonstrated the highest level of civic responsibility. And now therefore, Ferguson Township does hereby recognize and congratulate Mr. Steve McDonald for his dedication and many years of service, as well as his contribution to the local community, commended the second day of February 2024. And again, this was presented to Mr. McDonald in great appreciation of his service and time that he's dedicated to the township. So thank you all for allowing me to share that. It's quite an accomplishment. I will also share under announcements that the board did have an executive session on February 14th regarding personnel and a real estate matter. We have no proclamations this evening, so I'll check with staff to see if we need to take a little break at this point before I move to public input, or we could test it and see how it goes. That might be the only way to.
Give it 5 minutes.
Okay. Do you want to take a little recess, or okay, we'll go and take a recess for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Sure, I have 7:10 that we'll reconvene here. Thank you.
James, did you say that Don is
Let's just-
Disable the reclassification in the whole system.
Absolutely. It looks like CNET's ready. We're all ready to go. And I will call us back to order. I appreciate everybody's patience. And we will move to public input. And this is for any item not on tonight's agenda. And if there is some public input, I would invite you to come up to the podium. Please give us your full name and your township of residence.
Hi, everyone. My name's Phoebe Henry.
My name's Anna Helfenwood.
We both live in Ferguson Township on Berkshire Drive. We are in an advocacy course at the Delta program. We recently visited SCLO Library for a little behind-the-scenes tour, just of how they operate, and we learned a lot about valuable funding that you guys put into our local library, and we wanted to extend our thank you to the Ferguson Township, because without our library, we wouldn't have the resources that we have access to now.
My family often uses the library as our family meeting spot downtown, and we will continue to be grateful for your efforts of supporting our library, along with the time you dedicate to these meetings for our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you both so much. Thank you for coming this evening and for speaking. Really appreciate it. If there was anybody else that was speaking with that group, I invite you to come up at this time.
I think
But
it's
if-
important that they know too that Ferguson Township checks out the most books. So thank you for,
Absolutely.
that's something we're really proud of.
Yes.
We check out so many books, I think we have a book drop that's gonna need replaced.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Hi, good evening. My name is Fedor Sinev. I'm a resident of Park Forest Village. The Lords have informed me the village extends a little bit into the Ferguson Kingdom, but Park Forest Village, you know. But nonetheless, today I wanted to bring your urgent attention to the intersections of Circleville Road and Blue Course Drive. We have a lot of pedestrian and cyclist access crossing that road to go through the Penn State bike paths. However, the design of the intersection is that at the moment a slip lane is installed there, which is when vehicles they don't make a complete turn, they don't enter the intersection, but they merely cut through it slowly and gradually. Now, this presents a visibility hazard and a danger to pedestrians and cyclists, and it probably, to be honest, it presents one to the drivers as well. So I would recommend making urgent improvements there as soon as possible, because the center region is only going to become more densely populated. You're going to have more cyclists and pedestrians using that intersection. The only reason to have a slip lane there, to be frank with you, is to prioritize vehicle speed and throughput and not safety. So with that consideration in mind, I'd like you to think carefully about this issue, and as public officials, I hope you proceed somewhere with this. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate your comments. Okay, was there any other public input for items not on the agenda this evening? And I'm not seeing any. I'm not seeing any hands online. Did you have something? Oh, Dave, did you want to make a comment on that?
Just that if I could get his contact information, I would be able to respond.
That would be great. If you want to, I guess, leave it with the manager, perhaps, that would be helpful.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, thanks very much. Appreciate that. Thank you, Dave. Okay, we'll move to the approval of minutes. We have one set of minutes from February 6th. Were there any changes that needed to be made to those? And if not, I'll take a motion to approve.
This is Patty, so moved.
Is there a second?
This is Matt, I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. So we'll move to authorities, boards, and commission reports, and we have Lisa Collins with a SCLO library report.
First of all, I have to say that did my librarian heart a lot of good. I didn't know that they were going to be here tonight. So, I really don't need to do a report after that because we hear all the time from young people in our community how valued the library is, and I can't thank you enough for your support of it. I do have just a few numbers to kind of give you guys a feel for how your residents are utilizing the library. The first of which is really, as you said, Ferguson Township residents, they love to read. 149,099 items were checked out by Ferguson Township residents. That's just the physical items. That doesn't account for any of the electronic resources that are utilized. So I always kind of say that that's kind of just like a little bit of a sample of how your community is utilizing the library. The other piece of that is we know that about 27% of all of our overdrive, which is our electronic ebooks and e-audiobooks, are actually checked out by Ferguson Township residents. So about 27 to 30% of the physical and 27% of the electronic as well. So I think that shows that you have readers that are both electronic readers and physical readers of items. The other thing I wanted to raise your attention to was we had 32,174 items that were returned to the remote book drops. And those are located at the Giant. They're also located in your community here at the Pine Grove Mills a sort of exchange there. So we're really excited to continue to offer that service that's valued so much. A couple of highlights of what we're doing. The first of which is, as you can see, we continue our partnership with the State College Area School District. Our librarians were just at one of their events recently. They had over 1,000 people, families, really looking at books together, enjoying reading together, which was really fantastic, and we were excited to be a part of that. That's just a part of what we do with the SCASD program. We also provide the SCLO to School program there, where both students and also individuals who are employees can go ahead and get their items transferred to the SCASD libraries that are SCLO items. So we're excited about that. Finally, I want to just point out that we had over 100 volunteers last year that were serving at SCLO Library. That's pretty fantastic because I think people really give what they love with their time, and having over 100 volunteers working alongside us to serve our communities is a wonderful example of that. And many of those were also Ferguson Township residents, I'm proud to say. So, any questions I can answer for you tonight at all about the library?
Thank you so much. Questions, Ms. Collins?
Great, wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming to present the report tonight.
Absolutely, and thank you for sending great trustees our way. Barbara Ziff and Patricia Best could not be here tonight, and I said, well, I was thrilled to do it, and little did I know I'd get to follow behind some really amazing students, so that made it even better. Very special night for me, so thank you, appreciate it.
Great timing, I'm so excited. That was just fantastic, and to see
yeah.
those students come in. I know they've been coming to the different municipalities and making some presentations, so just love to see them out there. And
our teens throughout our community, we're really passionate about helping them to learn about their local government, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do through the work that we do at the library. And I hope someday that they're sitting behind these desks and participating that way. So big thank you.
Thank you again.
Take care, everyone.
Okay, we will move to special reports and acknowledgements. Under DEI, we have Black History Month in the month of February, and we will go to the Township and Fiscal Responsibility Report. Under that, we have the 2023 Annual State of Planning Report, and that will be presented by Rob Crossweller.
Okay, as Lisa said, I'm Rob Cresswell. I'm the vice chair of the commission. Liz Steinberg is the chair of the commission. He unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, is down in Arizona right now enjoying his time off. Current CRPC representative is Shannon Holliday, and Bill Keogh is the alternate to that. So last year was fairly busy for Planning Commission, although not as busy as when I started back in '87. It's still, but we had about 12 modification applications, of which 3 were for the 125 West Pine Grove Road, and I'm waiting to see that place open up. That's the restaurant type. I'd like to see that. We have 10 map amendments to ordinances, 7 minor plan alterations, subdivision plans, review things like that, 2 replots, and 1 conditional use of a stack and store in West College. We also looked at some other things in relation to our township, surrounding areas. We looked at Slab Cabin Run draft report, looking at that. We had a Huntington County active transportation plan we reviewed. So some of these other things we did. College Township official map we looked at also. And of course, we talked about the workforce housing ordinance, and I'm sure that's going to be coming up again this year. I know that's going to happen as well. We also did participate in 2 work sessions with the board on the Terrace Streetscape subdivision, and I think that's probably going to come up again this year. So what's old is new. One thing I would like to point out is that we are right now 1 official member short, and I'm hoping you can get that appointed fairly quickly. We also have 2 vacancies as alternates. Now, we have 3 alternates on the board, and I don't know if that's too many, too little, but I think the important thing is we need to get the other official person appointed as soon as possible. Any questions, comments?
Thanks, Rob. Questions for Mr. Cresswell on the report? Not seeing any. Thank you so much. The report was great, and it actually had little bits of education on the Planning Commission itself too. So I think that's really helpful to incorporate all that.
I'll fill in for Lewis, so Lewis gets all the credit.
Well, it was well done. So
okay.
Really
I remember sitting up there, so I know what you like and going through it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob, for coming tonight and presenting that. Okay, we will move to COG and regional committee reports. Up first is, in our COG committee reports, we have the Human Resources Committee report from Jeremy.
Yes, at our last meeting, we just looked at and discussed the facilities administrator job description as well as the fire inspector, firefighter job description.
All right, questions for Jeremy on that?
When will the facilities person be posted?
I think, I did not write that down. I think that they were planning that for later this fall. Position is budgeted to be refilled starting April 2024.
Okay, good.
So, and that subject to change because understanding COG does have some other
Right, yeah.
shufflings
Yes.
to take care of as well. So,
Okay.
All right, well, thank you. Okay, next is Finance Committee, and Matt.
Yeah, we held our meeting on the 8th of February. A couple highlights from that. Just wanted to mention the solar purchase power agreement that came around. I know we had a presentation here. COG, just for everybody's reference, is looking to save, to move, I should say, about 75% of their electricity into the agreement, which should save about $5,000 to $10,000 a year, as you noted in the report. There also is a point of clarification. If anybody read the contract on the purchase power agreement, if you really need to, we're struggling with insomnia, it's a great way to fall asleep. It was noted that there's a 14 megawatt DC comment in the second page, whereas the presentations were showing 22 megawatts. Well, that's AC is being used in the actual presentation, where DC is being reported in the contract. So a little bit of in case you noticed that, that's what that's from. Also, I want to draw everybody's attention to actually page 122 at some point in our agenda packet this evening, because for the first time, COG has put together essentially a Gantt chart, a timeline of the different financial deliverables that they'll have throughout the year. part of that is specifically the municipalities are called out for each of those documents. So we can see now where our role fits in the timeline in the calendar year and what they are expecting from us, etc. In the past, it was usually provided in an Excel file with dates and things, etc., but this is a visual representation. So again, that's on page 122, and I understand that it was even potentially used by the executive director of COG with maybe some managers recently. I don't know. He had mentioned that he was going to be kind of shopping that draft around. And so that's something else, which, if all goes well, the budget timeline would be approved here in March by the Finance Committee. So that draft will probably be enacted here shortly. And it's a communication tool, so it helps us see kind of where we fit into the decision-making process. So that's what I have.
Thank you. Questions for Matt on finance? Not seeing any. Okay. No, I hope that sparks more comments and suggestions than the Excel calendar chart had done. So I'm optimistic on that. So thank you for that. Okay, then we have the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee report, also from Matt.
Yeah, I'm up again. So again, purchase power agreement, we went through that as well. So talked a little bit about DEP, shared energy discussion based on having some different consultants come in, and sustainability in Pennsylvania. Most of this is in the report. The part that residents might be most interested in is the residential refuse request that we are looking to go ahead and switch to carts for garbage collection, to put it simply. So those carts that folks see on the side of the road that get picked up and dumped into the truck, that's likely where everything will be going. And so residents are aware. It sounds like there are a couple options as to what size receptacle you're going to get, either a 35 or a 95 gallon receptacle. Whatever you get, and however that process works, and I don't have all the details on that yet, you'll actually have a grace period to go ahead and say, I'd like the larger size, or I'd like the smaller size, or I'd like the smaller size, but my neighbor needs a larger one, so I'm going to go ahead and get a larger one so they can dump stuff in mine. Anyway, I jest, but it's going to be kind of it'll be a different way of collecting, the refuse that we have. So that's what's going on there.
Okay. Questions on Climate Action Committee report? Not seeing
Have
any.
they talked about the single-use plastics at all yet at the COG level?
Not that I've heard since joining this year. Yep.
Okay, that might be a fun one for next time.
All right.
Very good. Okay, and then we have the executive committee report. Jeremy?
So yeah, the executive committee, we met this afternoon. I have nothing further to add beyond on the agenda packet. The item that Mr. Heller had mentioned in finance did make its way down to executive committee, and it's moving ahead.
All right, questions on that? Not seeing any. Okay. We will move to staff reports, and up first we have the manager's report. If there's anything you wanted to add to that?
Thank you. Provided with the agenda is a copy of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Questions for the manager? Nothing. I guess I was just going to ask about what Matt had brought up about the COG budget timeline and the manager's concerns that they had expressed on that. If there was anything you wanted to expand on with that.
Yeah, so provided with the agenda is a copy of the Gantt chart included with my my report. There was some discussion last Wednesday when the regional managers and others attended a meeting, and one item that we discussed was the Gantt chart. And there were some concerns that we did bring to the executive director, which really focused on the timeline, specifically that all of the municipal entities generally have to have their budget approved no later than the second Monday or Tuesday, or I should say this, no later than the second week of December, with some exceptions, and understanding that our budget will be adopted prior to the budget being adopted by COG could leave COG in a situation where they don't have full access to funds that they may need in accordance to their budget. And I think we ran into this last year. And so we shared, a few managers shared with the executive director that they really might want to consider bumping up their time frame. Otherwise, the expenditures that they need to have funds for could be short if the municipalities adopt their budget without having an accurate dollar amount for COG. So more discussions will be had, and I'm sure that conversation will be floated and discussed with the members of the Finance Committee.
Good. Thanks for expanding on that. I think that's great for our Finance Committee rep to have that, that little bit of information to take back when this is discussed. So thanks. Yes.
If I may, that tells me it's working, right? Putting it in a visual that hopefully we can all get around and say, oh, wait, this doesn't make sense, or there's something that isn't lining up. That's good. So, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then we have the Planning and Zoning Department report. If there were any questions on that, I know that was included by Christina. Not seeing anything. And we have the Public Works Director's report, which was included. If there's anything you want to highlight from that.
Nothing tonight that I need to highlight. I can answer any questions.
Okay, thanks. Questions for Mr. Modricker? Not seeing any. Oh, yes.
Just one,
Yes.
just of the reports that kind of lines 15 to the bottom, a lot of stuff in design. What's the kind of plan for getting it, ready to go and out to bid? And is there are any of these like 8-month projects that we're gonna kind of bump up into in December and so we're late, or are they all more like 3-4 month projects and so we're looking good to get them out?
Yeah, so I have a separate spreadsheet where we track all that. I didn't include it. I can go down through the list with you if you like.
Is anything longer than a few months? Yeah, sure. Just more so if it's zero, cool.
Probably the longest project on here will be the Pine Grove Mills Bike and Ped project. So that is in design this year with construction anticipated next year. That's probably in there. The other longer project will be the Park Hills Drainage Way Improvement Project. So that started. So we're a few weeks into that. I expect it'll be all of this year's construction season with some planting for the final plantings in the spring of next year. Those are probably the longest lead projects, but I'd have to go down through the list and see what other ones there may be.
Copy. So nothing that, I'm just, in my brain, just maybe teasing out are we going to have any kind of funding, things to think about later in this year? And it sounds like we're good, and I guess we'll just come back next month and you'll let us know if there's anything like that.
Mr. Modricker and I work closely together to review the work schedule for Public Works, and so as those items are of concern for the board, equally concerning for the manager, and we bring those forward as we have those ready to present to the Board of Supervisors. But his report generally expands on some high-level updates on what the Public Works Department is working on.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, and moving to the Chief of Police report, which was included. If there's nothing to add, any questions for Chief? Not seeing any. Yes.
Actually, if I may, just a comment. After the last Board of Supervisors meeting on the way back to Pine Grove Mills, there was an accident. And in calling that in within a matter of only a couple minutes, a police officer was on the scene. I just want to thank you for the quick response and, your officers that responded. So well done. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that report. Okay, we will move to unfinished business. First up is a public hearing on amending the Code of Ordinances of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, Chapter 15, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Part 2, Traffic Regulations, Section 214, Stop Intersections Established. And we'll go to Mr. Modricker.
Thank you. So I summarized at the February 6th regular meeting. There were 4 intersections that staff looked at that would require ordinance changes to address stop, except right turn issues. Those intersections are Cherry Lane and Allen, Fox Point Drive and Pine Hall Road, West Gatesburg Road and West Ridge Road, and the North Coral Road, T-Berry Lane. So we discussed those in some detail at the last meeting, and there's a motion in front of the board to adopt the ordinance as written.
All right, thank you. And this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing and take any comments on this item. And not seeing any, I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
This is Matt. I'll make a motion that the Board of Supervisors move to adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 15, Part 2, Section 214, stop intersections established.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this item? Not seeing any. We had a good bit last time this was on. All right, so if there's no questions, this is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote for ordinance 1095. Ms. Stevens?
Yes?
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Thank you. Passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to an update on the solar power purchase agreement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Provided this evening with the agenda is a brief narrative, and some additional information is linked in the narrative with hyperlinked text for the board's consideration and the public's review. This evening we have with us Larry Pegger. He is the finance director with Patton Township. He's also a member of the SPPA working group. He is here in place of Pam Adams, who would generally be here to continue the discussion on the SPPA. But this evening, as you may recall, when Pam Adams was here, she said that this would be back in front of the board to solicit questions so we can get some answers for you to help position a higher level of confidence for a final decision by the Board of Supervisors. And so Larry is here to answer any questions. We also have Dave Modriker, our Public Works Director, who does sit on this SPPA working group as well and has been really front and center on behalf of Ferguson Township for over a year now, trying to get answers to the questions. And with that, I'll pause and yield the floor to Larry Pegger.
Yes, thank you, Centuries. I am on the PPA committee. I also am on the project management team. And you have seen the PPA project go through. You've seen the presentations. I won't show you the presentation again. I would just tell you that after many years of working with it, we're finally at the position where we have contracts for both our solar provider and our retail provider. There are some questions that the solicitors of the individual groups, there's 12 individual groups, the solicitors will come up with some questions. We, in our last PPA meeting, which was on February 14th, which was last Wednesday, we assigned or nominated Betsy Dupuy to be the solicitor that's going to gather questions from each of the individual organizations, solicitors, and discuss them with the solicitor that we hired. So they're going to discuss to see if there's any changes that we will need to make to these 5 contracts. I just wanted to mention that, and I will take any questions that you may have on those contracts and try to answer them, and if I can't, I will get back to you within a day.
That's great. Thanks so much, Larry. I'll see if Centrise or if Dave have anything else to add to that before we go to questions. And yes, yeah, please go ahead.
I had some questions I submitted and had answered. So typically when the questions are addressed to Larry or Pam, the project management team, they're pretty good at compiling those and coming up with answers. And I think they have those all posted in one central place.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Yes, yeah, thanks, Larry. And I think we've got a couple of different Q&A or fact sheets that are included in the reference materials, and so that's very good, because if one person has a question, generally others have it as well. So I know that when we had seen a recent presentation, it was kind of requested that we come back to the working group with questions about the contracts. I'm not sure we're in that place yet, so I think at this point it would be helpful to just compile any questions or comments we have at this point from what we had seen from the presentations. I think we've all either seen the latest one through a committee or through the evening events. And then, we've all been provided, again, with the Q&As, the fact sheets, the CNET recording of the presentation, and the contracts, which are online. So if there are questions now that we can forward back to the working group, I think there may have been some generated from these recent materials provided in presentations. So if we can get those collected tonight, forward them, get some responses back at some point, I think, to share at our next meeting. And then my thought then is to ask the solicitor to come back with a summary of the review of the contracts to present back to us so that we are receiving that review with the recommendation. And, I would anticipate, looking at the timeline provided by the working group, that would happen in late March or early April, so that we're able to have further discussions and then approve them. So, but again, this is just really to collect comments and questions that we have at this point, to forward them back to the working group to make sure we're in as good a place as we can be when we get that presentation from the solicitor on the contracts. So if there's anything, I just had a few, and I'll stick those in at the end, but we can start on this end.
I was actually curious, Ms. Madriger and Larry, just on your, what are the questions? I don't want to repeat, so what are the biggest, hairiest questions that you've gotten thus far? And what are those responses? Anything thus far?
I'll let Larry go first since he's on the project management team.
Okay, so obviously the biggest questions that we've received so far have all to do with risk. What is the risk for each of the individual organizations? What happens if one organization defaults? What happens to the other organizations? We tried in our discussions, and when we started this project, we had, I believe, 4 accountants on the project management team. So we were very, we had risk front and center. So we have talked about risk, we have mitigated the risk as best as I believe that we can. Obviously, nothing is 100% risk-free. We cannot tell what electricity costs are going to happen in the next 15 years. As I said in my board meeting, 15 years from now, electricity could be twice as much as we're paying, and it's a great project, or it could be half as much as we're paying, and we'll all blame Larry Pender for recommending that we sign this contract. So the biggest questions definitely have been about this. And you can find those questions and answers on the Q&As that are in the reference documents.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I would agree with Larry's assessment, and I think the group has done quite well to mitigate risk and predict what there may be in the future. And also, a lot of us have climate action goals that we're trying to achieve also. I think the other question that I heard that came up at the working group was the concern about, has land been secured and has approvals been granted for the land development process. The way the agreement is structured is that it's outside the agreement, right? It's that process has started, and the solicitor can probably address that concern better. But it was a concern that was brought up. But it is, the way the agreement's written, it kind of talks as if that process is proceeding as the agreements are being signed and that process is moving forward. So a risk could be that land development doesn't get approved, and then that developer in the agreement has to look for a different location, which might result in a delay to the project. But all of those delay issues and risk issues are addressed in the agreement. But I would say that would be like the second high-level concern that I heard.
How are they being addressed in the agreement?
The way they're being addressed is that there are provisions that say what the developer is obligated to do in the event that the chosen location for the solar array is not approved through the land development process. So, that there's one location where it's believed to be, and the intent is for it to go there, but if it doesn't, then there's kind of a delay while the developer finds that alternate location.
Right, and any delays, if I can interject here, the project is at the latest to be up and running October 31st, 2026. If it is not up and running by October 31st, 2026, there are penalties that the developer would pay to our group for being late in the process. So those are kind of the things I think that we're looking at it's to give them incentive to get it up and running by the time they say it's going to be, which is October 31st of 2026. If not, they're going to have to pay us penalties. Would you agree with that, Betsy?
Yeah, Larry, that's right. And we also at that point have the opportunity to get out of the agreement. There are provisions at that point in time. There's an initial target date and then there's a backup target date.
I think it's June of 2027.
Yeah, and that's one of the legal issues that I think the solicitors have pointed out. The language isn't clear as to when the delay damages actually kick in. Do they kick in at that initial date, Larry, or do they kick in at that initial?
I don't know, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I need to stay in the Holiday Inn. What I read was from October to June, they would pay penalties. And then June, we have to ignore the backup.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's two parts where that's addressed, and that's one of the issues with that agreement that will get sorted out for sure.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so the two things I haven't heard yet, number one is, just because I didn't want to repeat, if an organization gets out, does it open up to the other, or reduces or doesn't use all their power, are one of the other municipalities able to consume that additional energy?
So it is my understanding that the answer to that is yes. That if one organization gets out, they can basically sell their power to another organization. If they default, they will have to pay the developer damages for defaulting. And then I don't think the other organizations have to pay default, because the developer will be whole by getting the damages from the defaulting party.
What's a default in this case? We're talking about electric bills. Help me understand.
What's a default? You don't pay your electric bill. That's really the only default.
Oh, that's it. It's okay. All right.
You decide you're not going to pay your electric bill. You just say, hey, I'm not going to pay it. You're in.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's. That the risk of that is close to zero. So cool. I was just more like if Ferguson, I don't know, we got new light bulbs and they didn't eat up as much electricity as we thought. Does that give the borough some wiggle room to like consume more power and they have more savings, or does that go out to the grid? That's what I was wondering. Kind of that.
I believe that you could go to the Ferguson could go to the borough, and say to the borough, we want you to increase your percentage.
Okay. All right, great. And then number 2 was on the 5-year, so there's a 15-year contract for, hey, we're going to buy electricity, but there's these 5-year contracts with Direct Energy to say, manage it. How many other organizations, so we can break away from the other municipalities for that 5-year agreement? Is that what I understood? Is that what I read? Or like in the year 6? No, in year 6.
In year 6, it will depend. I believe that you will be able to do that. I don't believe that you will want to do that because the economies of scale. So part of that agreement with Direct Energy, part of it is to buy electricity off of the grid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's some organizations like Matt had said that COG is not allocating 100% of the electricity. So they're going to have to buy 20% of it off of the grid. So that's Direct Energy. Also part of Direct Energy's job is to manage the whole getting the solar off of the array into the grid, getting the electric out of the grid into our buildings. Okay, there is a cost associated with it. It's a service that we are purchasing from Direct Energy. That service, I believe, if we were out on our own, would be much more expensive for one organization than it will be to have all the organizations combined together service. But do I believe that you'll be able to go out after 5 years and do an RFP and get a retail provider? Yes, I believe you will be able to do that. You will need a retail provider because the contract with Prospect 14 requires us to have a retail provider. It requires us that somebody does that service for us. So you will need one. Whether that will be less expensive and more economical than doing one for the whole crew is yet to be seen.
That's helpful. Thank you. That's all I have, ma'am.
Thank you. Great questions.
Yeah, from my perspective, this is one of those things where, as my friend's mother would say, if you wait for every light to turn green, you'll never leave the house. I think if we keep what-ifing and this and that, and for the investment that's required here, it seems minimal. I've seen this board and other boards, you make decisions that are in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in a matter of 20 minutes. And this seems to just be coming up and more discussion, where the investment from a financial standpoint, from my perspective, is minimal. Even the return, I'll say it, is minimal. Maybe for Ferguson, we heard it might be $75,000 over 15 years. Minimal, right? But it's still an investment, and it helps with our climate action. So for me, I say let's move it forward. And that's my only comment back. So thank you.
Thanks very much. We'll go Jeremy.
So I have been through the contracts. My weekend was gone. It's gone. I lost my weekend over going through these contracts. And honestly, I might need to go through the contracts like a few more times just to kind of fully comprehend and understand things. And I appreciate the solicitor and other legal counsel that has been very diligent, and even staff. I believe somebody here has even read all the contracts to go through and do this review, so we have plenty of eyes on all these documents. Some questions that I have had: how is the township guaranteed electricity if the system doesn't generate or fails? In some of the presentations, it has been said that we would wouldn't experience a power disruption, but like, how is all that being taken care of behind the scenes to ensure there's not a power disruption? I'm also wondering, based on something Mr. Patterson had said about what if we use lower energy bulbs, if I'm correct, through this solar power purchase agreement, are we paying per the electricity we use, or is this going to be somewhat like a cell phone or internet plan where you're just paying so much for a set amount, and if you don't use it all, you're out? So that's a clarifying question that I would like to have. And I'm also wondering and apologize, Mr. Heller, this is a what if. What if there was a future board, whether that be here or in another municipality, I don't know, like, totally try to, is there a way that they could get out? What if they went, I don't know, try to get out of the agreement in some crafty form? I don't think you could get out of the agreement, but I've seen cases where certain municipalities just stop paying. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how that all gets resolved and what the implications are on that. So.
Okay, so if I can, I'll try to answer those one. I think your first question was, what happens if we have a fire? Well, I think you have to understand that, yes, this 22 megawatt solar array is going to be at Walker Township, but we are not going to have a direct line from that solar array to your building.
Right.
We're going to have a line that electricity has to go into the grid. I have solar panels on my house. They're not directly wired into my house. They're directly wired into the grid. The reason why you want that is because otherwise at night, without some sort of batteries or some backup, you're not going to have any electricity. Okay, so you'll generate a lot more electricity. They're going to generate a lot more electricity in the summer during the day than we're ever going to use. But we're going to sell that into the grid. Okay, and then we're going to buy off of the grid the electricity that we need. So no, you're not going to be paying a flat rate for your electricity. You're going to be paying a rate that's set in the PPA for the percentage of solar that's generated. And then there'll be a settlement. If we add too much solar generated, then we'll get some money back. Because we sold the excess. If we have less in the summer, middle of December, when days are short, snow is falling, you're not going to generate as much electricity, you're going to pay for more off of it. The end result is it's going to be trued off of the energy. So at the end of the year, you're going to pay for, in Ferguson Township's instance, 1.9% of the 22 megawatts that it is supposed to generate. But on the generating slightly, you're going to pay 1.9% of 90. Okay, so it's not a cell phone plan where you use it or lose it. That's not the case here, and it's not a direct energy that's coming directly from the solar. Your final question, like we talked about, if somebody defaults, or if somebody wants out of the PPA, first of all, the reason why we will have 12 different contracts, or 12 of the same contracts, each signed by individuals, is so that if Ferguson decides to get out of it or to float around it, that doesn't affect them. Okay? I don't know how Ferguson will get out of it other than to buy. Okay? Understand that what Prospect 14 is doing is building a major asset. They're gonna turn around and find investors that want to invest in this asset. And the way they're gonna get investors is two ways. One is we got tax credits that you can have, okay, and use on your tax returns. And number two is we have these 12 organizations that are going to pay us every month, so we have guaranteed income coming from this project. Without those two things, nobody would want to buy it. And Prospect 14 would. So their job is to build this array and then turn around and find investors, whether that be a bank or to loan them money, because I don't think Prospect 14 has enough money sitting around to do this. So they're gonna either borrow from the bank or borrow from other businesses. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Larry, that was perfect. This is no different of a deal as somebody building an office building around the corner, or
Exactly.
you know, a private school, or it's a real estate deal.
Mm-hmm.
So that was perfect, Larry. I really like the way you said that. Sorry, Patty.
No, that's fine. No, you sort of spoke to some of the questions I had, and first of all, I'm grateful that we have the opportunity for Betsy to go through the contracts on our behalf, and I am extraordinarily grateful for that, because like Jeremy, I read through it, and I think I retained maybe 3 things from what I read. But the one thing I did sort of cling on to was that this seller, so I don't,
Prospect 14.
Thank you, yes. They're in charge of any sort of green credit that will be generated from this. We don't get it at all as purchasers. Okay.
We kept that that way to, number one, it helps to make the project for their investors more favorable. It also keeps our electric costs. But we can go out and we can buy renewable energy credits. And those renewable energy credits, and we've done some research on this, will equal about 0.3 cents a kilowatt. So we'll still be saving on electricity, even buying the renewable energy.
Okay. And then I guess the sort of larger question in general is, I was reading something that for the sale of the back to the grid, I'm guessing, we pay the taxes on our portion. Is that right?
No, we pay the taxes on the purchase.
On the purchase. So we're not paying taxes on anything that gets sold back to the grid that we're not using?
Yeah, because what gets sold to the grid is at most.
Okay.
And it's like, it's a resale on it. So it's electricity that's manufactured and goes into the grid. So they don't charge tax until it hits the end user. We will pay tax on it when it is delivered to our end location, whether that be building, or a traffic light, whatever it is. That's when we will pay.
Okay.
And those will be the same taxes that we're paying today for West Point.
And then my final thing is the solar panels that we have now, and I'm assuming we sell back to the grid. That's just a separate thing altogether from this purchasing
Yes.
agreement. Okay. All right, that's all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for
Yes.
your hours and reading through all that material.
Thanks, and I just have a couple questions. A lot were asked and answered, so thanks everyone for asking all of those things. I think I just want to go back and I guess ask one question a slightly different way. So we are obligated to pay for the amount we've contracted for as part of the total PPA purchase. So if we're contracting for a certain amount, that's what we are obligated to pay for.
You are obligated to pay for a percentage of the generation. It is not in specific kilowatts. You're not saying we're gonna pay for 500,000 kilowatts. You are obligated to pay for 1.9% of what is generated on the solar.
Okay.
However, that is a marketable commodity. So, two things could happen. One is we sell it, the excess that you don't need back to the grid at more than what you paid for, or at less than. Depends on, the time of the day, what's happening with electric. Over time, electric rates have increased over time. But they sell and buy electric every hour. So it goes up and down and up and down hourly. So depending on, what day we sell it, it may sell for higher than what we're using, it may sell for less than what we're using. And then at the end of the year, we true it all up and put that adjustment.
Thank you. Okay. And that makes sense. I wanted to kind of ask it from the reverse angle, so I appreciate that. So I guess just on the contracts themselves, so I know the one contract that was included in the SharePoint is the transaction confirmation, and that was the SCASD example that's in there. So our solicitor has been or will be provided with ours.
That's correct.
Okay. And
even the one that's in there, the SCASD that's in there, it only included direct entities fee. 0.0025. That's not the cost of the electricity. That's just.
Okay. And then just so we're clear, so, our solicitor is Betsy, and so Betsy has agreed to, so you are, it said in the narrative, I think, that you are the lead for the group. So I just want to clarify, so you're essentially collecting the questions, kind of like we were doing today, collecting the questions from the other municipal or entity solicitors and sharing those with the PPA solicitor, and then sharing back responses you get. So you're the contact person, but you're not reviewing this on behalf of the different entities and municipalities.
Well, I am in fact reviewing it based for three, and that's for you, for Patton, and for Center County. And we've already discussed with the county administrator and the two managers how we'll manage that. But as a practical matter, you're correct. I'm not going to be giving opinions back to any other parties besides the three of you. And I think at this point, the intent is, before I would go to the outside counsel, we're going to probably review those comments again with the working group. At least I think that's what John had asked, John Frank. And that way we identify what are really legal issues and what are what I will call risk issues. And then I can speak to that individual and see what transpires. I mean, that's really what's going to happen.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of level set, just to make that clear in my mind. In the executive summary, it had said that none of the contracts could be changed unless agreed to by all the counterparties. And so I guess that was an interesting note. And so is that, did I read that correctly, was a question. That was in the executive summary provided by Green Sky.
I think the intent here and the desire of Prospect 14 and certainly Direct Energy is that they don't have different agreements with everyone. I don't think we should read that to suggest that at the moment these are done deals and we have to take them as they are. But I think ultimately, at least the Prospect 14 agreement, the principal agreements are going to be the same between Pat and Ferguson, the borough, the county, the school district. And I think that's a matter of convenience. I suppose if there was one party that had some burning issue and wanted to negotiate it separately and they were willing, that's fine, but I don't have a sense of that. I honestly can't answer that question either because I've not spoken to our council. All of the communications thus far have been filtered to the consultants and I think the school district's representative to then take to the attorney. So, you know, I'm not saying that's not true, that's not my point, but I am saying that sometimes when there's another attorney on the other end of the line, it's a slightly different conversation than when a lawyer is talking to a layperson.
Thanks. Yeah, and I'm again just appreciative of the the updates, the answers you were able to provide. I wasn't even sure we'd be able to get answers tonight. Just trying to kind of get this next level or next round of questions out there. So to get all that information is great. And I agree, and I'm supportive of the project, and I think what's important about all these questions and things if we get questions from residents is to make sure that we are crossing all those T's and dotting all those I's, and Patty and I had spoken about this. I think this is innovative, and this is new, and this is different, a very different process for a lot of these groups involved with this, and so we want to do it right. And that way, the next time something that is going to be so beneficial, hopefully, but is also innovative and new comes along, it's not like, well, that we have a bad experience to look back on. No, we want this to move forward and succeed. And so I think it's great to put all the questions out there and challenge it, to see what comes back, because we want to be secure and certain in these decisions. So. I think, what I had said early in the discussion is that what I'm hoping is that next time we have this on our agendas that we could have more of maybe a summary of the review of the contracts and standings of where everything is at as an informational item with some discussion. I'm sure additional questions at that point, but to really, hopefully if Betsy can come back and Larry or Pam to come and with Dave to give us really that kind of high level overview of what the contracts are including, what provisions are favorable to us, to the developer, so I think that's important for us to hear. So we'll look forward to that next time. Is there anything else from any of the board members?
I think the contract summaries would be very beneficial. I think the more information that we can get out in plain language will help educate the public, because there is a lot of material in those contracts, and if that's all the public gets, I would be afraid that maybe things would maybe get misconstrued and then get thrown out in the square as misinformation. So having that plain language would be helpful.
And even following the model of that executive summary that's in there, that was
Yep.
very helpful to have since we just have the contracts and the legal language in there. If there's nothing else from the board, I'll see if staff has anything else to contribute or ask. At this point, you're satisfied with where we ended on that, okay? Then I'll just thank Larry and Betsy and Dave. That was very, very helpful. I think.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah.
And I have a project management team meeting tomorrow morning. I will bring your request for contract summaries up.
Fantastic.
Okay?
All right.
Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't think you need an emotion from this because we really, since we had both of them here to answer a lot of these questions, we really didn't have to forward it. So we can move on and we will move to new business. And we have the consent agenda. Did anyone need to remove anything for discussion? Seeing no.
Yeah. I'd like to just hear a little bit more on the tree. Is anybody here to talk about the tree? You would be
Okay,
able to?
so
Okay.
we will remove item C.
Yes, please.
Okay, would someone care to make a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda?
This is Amari, so moved.
And this is Patty, I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Thank you. Okay, so we will move to the award contract 2024-C14, street tree planting, and Omari.
Awesome, thank you. So this was just more of a understanding for my mental in the future as we consider budgeting. But so, understand that we bids went out. There's some trees that are going to be where we've taken to bid, private entity, but there's some trees that we're planting that are going to be done in-house. And so is that our model going forward? And Mr. Roger, do you think that's a good model going forward and something to scale over?
Yeah, so I think it's a good model currently. So the bald and burlap are planted by contract and they're guaranteed for a year. And I believe they're 2-inch diameter. And those are replacement trees. So we put those in the locations where mature trees existed but have died or didn't thrive. The other trees, the bare root trees, are typically what we use for planting opportunities. So the bare root tree doesn't have a ball, it has bare roots. The excavation isn't as deep. We purchased the trees directly from a nursery, so our purchase price is less, but we have labor and equipment involved in doing it ourselves. Because they're planting opportunities, it's locations where there also are existing utilities. So it's to our advantage to plant something that we don't have to excavate for the entire depth of the ball. So for those reasons, it's a good model that's working for us currently. In the future, as we look at what we contract out and what we're able to perform in-house, and we may have, more in-house staffing, for example, on the arborist crew, then that model may move toward more in-house purchases. And that same thought process could be used for the pruning contracts also.
Copy that. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
sure.
That's it, Madam Chair.
Okay, anything else?
No, ma'am.
All right, do we have a motion to approve award contract 2024-C14, street tree planting?
This is Amari, so moved.
Okay, is there a second?
And this is Patty, I'll second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. So we'll move to a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, authorizing the application for a traffic signal for West Cherry Lane School Zone. And back to you, Mr. Modricker.
Yes, so in our budget, we have funding for design that we're doing in-house, and then ultimately for construction of a traffic signal. This was discussed during our capital improvement plan, addresses concerns brought up for a school zone on West Cherry, and to advance the project through final design with an anticipated bid let date in the spring and summer. PennDOT requires an application for a signal, and so that is what is in front of you, is a copy of a resolution to authorize the signature on the application.
All right, thank you. And this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for comments on this item. Not seeing any, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
I'll move that the Board of Supervisors adopt a resolution authorizing the township manager to sign the application. This was Mr. Thompson.
Okay, is there a second?
This is Matt, I'll second.
All right, any discussion on this item? Let's start down here if there's
No,
anything.
just that I'm excited to have this in place.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Anything? Okay, if there is no other discussion, this is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote for 2024-04. Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you. And the vote passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, up next is a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, authorizing the acquisition of easements for the West Cherry Lane School Zone flashers. Back to Mr. Nodricker.
In conjunction with the project that I just described, it's necessary for us to acquire two very small easements, one on each end of the project where the flashers are going. We have approached those property owners. They are amenable. The easements have been granted to the township. And so tonight we're asking that the Board of Supervisors adopt a resolution authorizing the township manager to sign those agreements on behalf of the township.
Great, thank you. And this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for comments on this item. If there are any comments, and I am not seeing any, so I'll close the public hearing and would look for a motion.
This is Matt. I'll make a motion that the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution authorizing the township manager to sign the easement agreements.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, this is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote for 2024-05. Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Thank you. Vote passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, next is a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, authorizing the application for a traffic signal for Science Park Road and Sandy Drive North traffic signal. Mr. Moderator.
In the budget, we have funding for the construction of a new traffic signal at the intersection of Science Road and Sandy Drive North, I call it, because there's two intersections with Sandy Drive. That signal project design has been done in-house. It's working its way through the final permitting process with PennDOT because we need to have all of our traffic control devices approved and permitted by PennDOT. And similar to the flasher, an application is necessary to be submitted. And in front of you is a copy of a resolution to authorize the signature on the application.
All right, thank you. And this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for comments on this item.
Very much needed. My office is on Sandy Drive.
We will take one. If you want it submitted for the record, I'd invite you to come up and give us your name and township of residence, and we can record your public
I'm
comment.
David Roshot, Patton Township I live. I work in Ferguson Township on Sandy Drive, and that's a 10 years past due. So 5:05, it takes like 15 minutes to, it's almost near impossible turning left on Sandy on the signs.
Thank you. Okay, other public comment on this item, and I'd ask you to give your name and township of residence. Thank you.
Hello again. My name is Fyodor Sinev. I'm a resident of Patton Township in Park Forest Village. So I wanted to comment on this item today. I do believe there are bike and pedestrian paths along Science Park Road, correct? So I just, when redesigning the intersection, I would like somehow for, pedestrian and cyclist traffic to be more, prioritized than what we normally deal with, Again, I think the share of cyclists in the center region will only be going up in the recent years. So I just want some sort of protections for, crossing cyclists. Maybe consider raising, the road, the pavement of where pedestrians and cyclists cross along Science Park Road. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the name of the intersection, but I know where it is. But yeah, I would appreciate just your utmost attention to this project, and I also appreciate that you do in-house designing. After hearing long-winded discussions about contracting, the benefits of in-house, right there, he knows all about it, I think. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your comments. Okay, any other comments on this item? And not seeing any, I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
This is Matt. I'll make a motion that the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution authorizing the township manager to sign the application.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this item? We can start at this end. No?
No, just that I'm, like everybody, I'm really happy it's going in. I know that CVIM has been clamoring for it since they've opened their operations there, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's a busy intersection.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, it's a few years late. My childcare is right there on Sandy Drive, and so, picking up at 5:30 and trying to get out of there was a mess. And we're no longer there.
Yeah.
So I don't get the benefit of this new light, but a lot of people for a lot of years will, so.
Absolutely. And there is a lot of bike and pedestrian activity along that area, so I appreciate those comments, and I know that'll be taken into account as we move forward. So very much appreciate all the comments on that, and really all the work that's gone into this. Has been a long project, and very excited about it. Okay, and this too is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote, 2024-06. Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes?
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, the vote passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, authorizing to submit a Green Light Go grant. Back to Mr.
Madam Chair,
Oh.
this item as a real estate matter has been presented to the board at a previous meeting for discussion. This is a discussion.
I think we
back-
skipped ahead.
Oh,
One. Did
my
I skip one?
apologies. Did we skip one?
Green light go.
We did.
5. No, yes,
I'll
okay, so
pause
this.
there and we'll go back. That sounds good.
Back to the Green Light Go.
When are these real estate?
We're excited to move on.
Moving on.
So many public hearings, we don't even, they all look the same in the agenda. We'll go back to Mr.
Madam Chair,
Mr.
we are on
Mulliker.
time with all of our items except for one, so we're doing good.
Should I do item 5?
We'll do 5, yes, thank you
Okay.
very much.
The township has been very successful for many years submitting Green Light Go grant applications. And in this case, in your packet is a memorandum that outlines some of the funding commitments and also the many safety improvements that will be offered if we are the recipient of the Green Light Go. In particular, attaches a memo from the township engineer requesting the submission of a Green Light Go grant. And the scope of the project is for the intersection in North Atherton Street at the Blue Course Drive, Clinton Avenue intersection. It implements a number of movement and pedestrian safety improvements as identified in the Northland Mobility Project. So it addresses those concerns. And also attached in the agenda is a resolution that authorized the submission of the grant and a funding commitment letter.
Okay. And this too is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for comments on this item. I'm not seeing any, so I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Madam Chair, this is Omari. I move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution authorizing the Green Light Go grant application submission.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Patty, I'll second.
Thanks. Any other discussion on this item? You can start over here.
Yeah, very, very minor here insofar as we want to get this grant. There's a 20% match requirement, and we're committing to a 31% match. Okay, that makes sense. Are there any concerns? I mean, in past that we've gone after kind of these type of improvements, what has been kind of the overage or underburn of those dollars in other projects that we've done similar?
So Green Light Go applications, our track record, I would say, is within budget or not any large significant overruns. And usually with these type of applications, the township engineer's had an opportunity to do some of his own estimating of costs beforehand. Some other grants that we submit for example, the TASA grant for the bike lane improvement projects, there's a little bit more unknown in those regard. And we haven't done any design, and they're very preliminary. So on some of the transportation improvement grants we've gotten in the past, I'm thinking about the pedestrian improvements in Pine Grove Mills, for example. We went back to the MPO probably twice for additional funding, and we were fortunate to get it. So, I mean, there is some risk because the design's not done, but I would say on the Green Light Go grants, it's relatively low, if that answers your question.
Very much so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And then would, because we have money in the Northland Mobility Study fund, would we be using that to apply to this?
Certainly,
Would that be an
your
option?
prerogative, yes.
Yes, okay. This would be applicable for that, okay.
There's a specific line item for the Green Light Go grant match within the 2024 operating budget.
Okay. So, okay. Any overages then we could, or contingency or whatever.
Oh,
we could
thank you.
look to that, yes, yeah.
Manager.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Very good, okay. And let's see, let me find my place. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to say also related to this, this is again a long time coming. I think those no right turn on red signs are going to be, invaluable to improve the safety of the pedestrians crossing there. I can't tell you how many times I know heading down towards campus, we'll say, so traveling south on Atherton, folks try and rush into that right turn before the light turns red, ready to beat the oncoming traffic. If there's a left turn light and lane, I've seen people try and rush through there and nearly hit people multiple times in the years that I've been here. So the no right turn on red is, I think, a significant improvement. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. I think that could be useful in a number of areas.
Yeah,
I think
and
it's
that
important.
in that particular intersection too, I know that people in Overlook Heights will be especially grateful for improvements, because when you're coming off of Clinton trying to go left on Atherton to campus, if there's oncoming traffic from Blue Course, especially catabuses, you just sit through lights.
Mhm.
So
Right.
that intersection really needs some attention. And for all those safety reasons.
Mhm.
Sorry, excuse me, Jeremy.
Oh, no worries. Good.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I know we're at time here.
We're good.
Definitely want to give a shout out to our engineering team. Learn a lot when they're in the house, and they do a good job every day here. Definitely agree about that no turn on red, especially at that particular intersection, because I think so often pedestrians are obscured by the sign for the establishment at that corner, and I've seen a lot of close calls.
And it's a
Both in terms of the motorist not seeing, but also the pedestrian not realizing that there was cars turning right, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and just to have one more thing addressed from the Northland Mobility Study is great, because that's
Yep.
something that a lot of time was put into, so, and a lot of needs were identified. All right, anything else on that? And if not, this is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote for 2024-07. Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, you have a unanimous.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll move to a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, authorizing the township manager to execute the sale of township property on Science Park Road, and we'll go to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item has been in front of the board previously for discussion. This has been reviewed by the solicitor, including the appraisal report that was done by Mr. Rochot in regard to the 0.1512 acres of vacant land that is of no use to the township. It's a strip of land that's adjacent to Mr. Rochot's property. Mr. Rochot is with us this evening should the board have any specific questions. I'll also note that to the board that Mr. Rochot has utilized Chris Allmiller, who is actually the board's appointed appraiser. And so, as previously acknowledged, I recommend to the board that this be considered and adopted by resolution. And happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thanks very much. And this too is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for any comments on this item. Not seeing any, so I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution authorizing the township manager to execute the sale of township property on Science Park Road.
Is there a second?
This is Matt, I'll second.
Thanks. Any discussion on this item? Let's start down here. If there's anything, not seeing anything. Anything on this item?
Yes. I think I brought this up, right? This was something that we talked about a little bit, the slip of property. And,
Yes, we've had,
Okay.
yeah, we had this before.
no, I didn't bring it up. Sorry, wrong choice of words. I had a concern about, I think it was giving away versus selling it. So I appreciate whoever took the initiative to go and kind of address that. I think from an appraisal perspective, I think it was an interesting, that, going too technical, but a sales comparison approach, which is, hey, how did other little small right-of-ways or kind of small slips get valued? And I think what I had brought up was more of a, I would say, income approach, which was, well, I'm gonna increase the size of my footprint of my building, generate more income, and therefore I'm gonna share that kind of future income discounted with other parties that are gonna give some land. So I think, I guess at the end of the day, I don't have a major problem with the way that was used, but I definitely, what was done was not what I requested. But just want to make that note. But nonetheless, the township isn't just going to kind of give something away that does have value. That, you know, we're actually doing a reasonably priced transaction, and that makes me happy, because we've been mowing this for probably several years, you know, right, and putting some dollars into it, and so not for naught.
We have not.
haven't.
We haven't maintained it at all. Okay.
No, it's of no use, and we
Yeah.
haven't provided maintenance for that property.
Oh, interesting. All right, that's all my comments.
Thanks. Any other comments on this? I'm satisfied with this. I appreciate the work on getting the appraisal and coming back. I think it's, something we don't have to take care of now and we're not using, so I'm satisfied. If there's no other comment on this, this is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote for 2024-08. Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vote passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rochat. Okay, we will move to discussion on training events for Board of Supervisors. And this I'll briefly introduce before I read the narrative, which is the entirety of the item, actually. I just wanted to take a few minutes to expand on all of the trainings that we've done here really in just the first, 7 weeks of the year, and it kind of reflects back to a little bit of last year too, but all the trainings that the board and ABC members have attended and that staff has really taken a lot of time to put together, to create in some instances, and organize attendance of. And so it's no small feat to get board members and ABC members around a table to participate in a training. And so I'm really just wanting to kind of itemize what we've been doing here just on that piece of it. So following the swearing in of the Board of Supervisors on January 2nd, 2024, the township held a board orientation on January 3rd, providing an overview of duties and responsibilities, and were updated or provided an updated Board of Orientation manual. Which was, again, updated, expanded, and included a lot of very, very helpful information for any new board members. Additionally, supervisors participated in the newly elected official training series coordinated by the Municipal League, in which newly elected and incumbent officials are invited to participate in personal development and training opportunities. Session topics included ethics and human resources, social media, the ABCs for newly elected officials, labor and employment issues, co-stars, and how to run a meeting, and introduction to the mentorship program and a legislative overview. And those were a series of trainings. As well, the board will receive presentations from the Finance Department, Public Works, and Planning Departments in a series of lunch and learn sessions. And additionally, authorities, boards, and commissions orientation was piloted last fall and will take place for new members this spring. So we did a pilot of the program in the fall, had our recent appointees attend who were kind of appointed off cycle, and so had an opportunity to test and see how this new orientation ran, got a lot of great feedback, and we'll be able to start it fully this year with our new members and existing members who want to come and maybe refresh on Robert's rules and their role as a planning commissioner or what have you. So there was a lot that has been done, by all the participants and organizers, and so this was just an opportunity to kind of acknowledge that, to really thank all the staff that has participated and will, and particularly those lunch and learns, I think are just going to be such a great way for the board to get a really good handle on each department, to be interacting with the department heads and really understand what's going on there. So just a thank you, and really looking forward to broadening all of this. So it's great.
And Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'll just share. So that the narrative was actually updated, so when it'll be refreshed, and then you'll see even a lengthier version. And it'll just include an acknowledgement that the board orientation manual that was initially designed for the first time in 2017 was reviewed and updated in collaboration, with legal officials and others that specialize in government training and sessions. And I'll just acknowledge that board orientation manual, as you may recall, all of you received a copy of it. It certainly reviewed the Ferguson Township's organizational structure, the role of elected officials and appointed officials and staff. Additionally, the manual presented an overview on duties and obligations of the boards and the Center Region Council of Governments, the township's committees, commission, and boards, as well as it provided that comprehensive on ethics and responsibilities of being a public official, and acknowledge that the elected officials, were also introduced to public official liability and limits of insurance carrier, their inter-township communications, and then open meetings, Sunshine Act, public records, etc. And then I'll also share with you that I noted is the leadership retreat that is scheduled for the Board of Supervisors to attend a 2 half-day sessions that'll really, support additional training on the capital improvement plan, also referred to as the CIP and the annual operating budget, components and process. So we're really excited about that.
Thank you. Thanks for all of that. It was just an informational item. If there's any comments.
Just, Madam Chair, thank you for sharing. I must say to those that may be listening to this, as elected officials, when we come into this job, there's no hard, firm, fast requirement that we are experts in any one particular facet of municipal government. So therefore, we do have a lot of training opportunities, and it's nice to see us as elected officials seize those opportunities, because that does help us to learn and be more rounded individuals. And I was going to say the training's been very, very valuable. And for some of us, have to say, Ferguson's been very good, but I do know when Mr. Patterson and I attended the training, we were actually speaking with a mayor in a neighboring county that has a municipality right now that there's a lot of stuff that they got to fix up and address. So, it's not always easy for us coming into office, and so just want to put that out there.
Thank you. All right, well, thanks. Thank you, everyone, for your time on that item. And we'll move to a discussion on the Center Region Council of Governments Parks Capital Committee, and I will actually turn this over to Patty Stevens.
Yes. You can read the narrative. Basically, for my next meeting for the Parks Governance, they are interested in us discussing, I think more or less communications. There has been, so the whole Parks Governance Committee itself came about because there was a Parks Comprehensive Plan that was done. I'm guessing maybe that was like in 2019 or 2020, I'm not even sure, but, and there was, it identified, a consultant identified just some awkward chains of command, if you will, or reporting structures. And so it had us looking at this system. And it is sort of an awkward system. But so basically they want to make it as smooth as possible communications, like really understanding this is all predicated on the idea that the Parks Authority, that body, is staying. And so some of the discussion had been around, should we eliminate the Parks Capital Committee? They don't really meet anymore, and there was a matrix provided in our agenda that we had discussed, who's sort of responsible for different aspects of overseeing the parks, advisory, fundraising, policy, setting fees, things like that. And those are the agreed upon responsibilities in that matrix. And they just went to, there had been some talk of eliminating the Parks Capital and what should be in its place. Should the issues with parks be handled by facilities and finance? Can we dissolve one committee and roll the responsibilities into facilities and finance? How do we communicate with our authority representative? How does our parks committee here, our township park committee communicate so that there is, I don't know, just open and dialogue with everybody to keep the authority and the municipalities communicating in a functional way. Anyway, so any thoughts you have about parks that I could take back to the governance committee, and if you will allow me, I will just sort of lead into that I am really, I can understand that they want to do away with the Parks Capital Committee, but I'm not in favor of eliminating a Parks Committee altogether. I would still like to have a smaller subcommittee sort of overseeing some of the decisions that get made before, because as you had said, Matt, you know, finance didn't really want to be, they wanted the smaller committees to work through some issues, pick apart issues before it got so that you, the finance committee folks, aren't setting the policies or things like that. And I sort of see it like public safety, you know, they tell the staff and tells us what they need, or the public safety committee sort of reviews, oh, okay, maybe can we push off that fire truck? And it's a smaller group of the general forum that gets to pick apart issues and discuss and go through it with a fine-tooth comb before it actually goes to finance with the approval or blessing of. So I would still like to see some sort of oversight, but that's just me, and I want to know how you all feel about the parks governance. Should it fall to facilities and finance, or should we still have a separate committee? Best communication strategies with the authority. Anything, thoughts?
Yes, go ahead, please.
I mean, my initial thought is, you know, kind of sharing it between facilities and finance makes a lot of sense, because I've already heard in the finance committee, right, where we've been looking to, as was brought up to the executive committee, a little more visibility into the facilities committee, and it sounds like finance and facilities are working a lot closer now, or are probably going to be, through some of the requests that are being made from finance. So I think having it split there, or even having it directly related to the facilities committee, makes a lot of sense, because I think those two groups, again, are just going to be working more collaboratively or openly.
Okay, and I think my pushback on that is that my understanding is that facilities was established to do like a facilities condition assessment and looking at taking care of what we have. So not just, so I'm afraid that something might come from the authorities to facilities or to, and it's like, well, this is the recommendation from the authority, but the authority are not elected officials. They're appointed, and so they aren't so necessarily, they're not looking at it through the lens of, oh boy, can we afford this, and who's all participating in this. They are just coming at it from a parks lens. And facilities, I think, has a greater picture. So they're looking at like windows in the COG building. Are they proper? Do we need to get charging stations? Or, you know, they are also looking at the fire departments, the doors, the roofs, the things like that. So they really are looking at what we have and scaling and doing things that way. But to start making decisions about recommendations from the Parks Authority, I don't know. I just feel like there's room for more municipal oversight.
Well, and I'd say you, just to jump in, you missed the personnel part too, then. And so just to look at it, I like that idea of looking at the public safety model, because there you're having a body of elected officials who are vetting those projects, initiatives, new staffing through their own municipal lens and also through a budget lens. And so if we're just having the authority kind of decide or advise on those things, and then it goes straight to finance, you're missing that step of the elected officials looking at that. Because as I'm understanding it, it would only be divided between facilities and finance. And so facilities, I guess, could look at maintenance issues of the parks and maybe fleet management, but I don't know what beyond that. And so much of that expense is staffing. So I guess that's where I'm getting a little bit of a disconnect, and I'm agreeing with Patty that I'd hate to dismantle the Parks Capital Committee without having something else in its place. I think once that's gone, there won't be another Parks Committee. So either transitioning Parks Capital to Parks, just Parks, because the Capital, I believe, was really established in the effort of managing the large capital regional parks projects, and that's a side issue now. We've got the loans taken out for that, so it doesn't need to be a Parks Capital Committee. So, but you do need, I think, that level of oversight there. Just like Patty said, once you have your representative appointed to an authority, they're a member of that authority, and so they're not necessarily coming to, you know, they can come and take our temperature on things, but not necessarily to relay everything we say back. They're their own authority. And so to have some other level of oversight there, given, you know, especially how much Ferguson Township contributes to this, and, you know, what a large piece of the COG budget this is. So I would agree. So either transitioning to like a just the Parks Committee, or, you know, if Facilities wants to handle the whole, have it be Parks and Facilities, and so then you've got all the park staffing, all, you know, all of this other stuff to combine in there. Finance has a lot on its plate, and so to add in anything additional, and I don't think they would be adding anything additional, so they wouldn't be vetting these things. Finance doesn't want to be making those kinds of decisions. That's what they want to leave to staff and the committees, but you don't have the committee in this case. And so that would be my conflict with just eliminating it. And
yeah, and I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to say eliminate. When I thought by splitting the two, but also still having what was recommended from Patty.
I understand.
Understood. No, I think that group is
yes.
necessary.
Gotcha.
And I guess I don't have enough context to understand all the different areas that are in there right now, people, etc., and what might go to one committee versus another committee, etc., and how the portion that would be split off could be split off. So that I just don't have enough information about to inform that. But yes, I agree, something has to exist, and that the other things, whatever those things may be that I don't understand right now, those would have to be split. So I'd have to do some more homework in this space. But yes, I agree, something has to be there.
Yeah.
It is confusing. I mean, since I have been on this committee, I've been trying to understand the history of what's happened, and I'm not even sure that there was ever a decision, a vote about, do we even want the authority to exist? Is it something we still need? Because I mean, if you look at the matrix, you know, the discussion is well, what are they doing that we couldn't do as COG committees?
That was my first question I had on there, is what does the authority do that Parks Capital, Finance, and Facilities couldn't? Plus, we have municipal park committees that they're all spending a lot of time on this stuff. And so, you know, and how much staff time, I guess these are all questions I would send back to the committee. How much staff time is spent on the authority? And, you know, what is redundant there maybe, or what really couldn't we put in the hands of the elected officials and the appointed ones from our own township parks committee? So
right. I know that the big thing for the big reason for keeping the authority as it is because they can borrow money. That's their superpower. So and COG cannot. So,
2 words. Fix it.
fix it, right? Yeah. I'm trying.
I mean, at the end of the day, that'll be the recommendation is what will fix that spider web, that ball of confusion. Like, even I'm listening and it's like, but this and the stuff is everywhere. And so I really liked when I read the issues and history and background, it did give a couple of things where it's like, make this clear in this document. And so, yeah, I think to start peeling it away, and yeah, if it's like, you know what, just burn that committee, put it in the other 2 committees, and then see what happens. At least it gets the ball rolling and gets started toward a better posture that isn't in 7 different places. Okay, now it's in 4. And then burn something else. Now it's in 3, and and burn is probably the wrong word here, but I'll find a new one later. But to just start removing the parts and pieces that are confusing might be a good thing. And there's absolutely staff time being spent in multiple areas on this. I experienced it myself. This is the one and only issue I've had with the center region in my time here in living here. Was with a park, and like having to go to different entities to understand where the heck do I get some resolution here. So yeah, whatever is gonna fix it, we just need to do it. Absolutely, I agree. Whether it's update the mission. Sorry, I'll pause there.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think that's the fear with dismantling Parks Capital, is that it will just be spread all over and there won't be a central home. And so I think, to your point, I think just trying to say this is where the oversight lives in one place for now, which is what I would think would be an evolution of Parks Capital. It would be, Parks, whatever, whatever you'd want to call it, but some vehicle for the electeds to have oversight there and for it to live there and not be spread out. So I think that's, I agree. I think that would help dismantling it. And this governance committee, I think that was the thought was, put this ad hoc governance committee together so we can really figure out where we're at. And that was, I think, the initial question is what is the purpose of the authority? We don't have the ability to dismantle it, but is it necessary? Should that really become, or should that be replaced by a foundation? Because what it needs is funding for the big projects. And so does that follow more of the library model, something like that? So I think all of those questions, I think this is the feedback for you.
Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
And if I may, I think what I'd be looking for is really just a proposal. Here's what, something that I could look at to say, here's the proposal, here's some benefits of it, here's some cons. And by the way, here's another proposal. So maybe an A and B solution that could then be something that we could see kind of in black and white, just to throw pickles at and adjust and find something that works.
I think that's the matrix.
Yes, and I think it's the clarity that I would hope to gain from that in simple terms. This is that, making it just as black and white as we can so that we can pick and choose. Yeah. And you're right.
Yeah, and I think to Amari's point, minimizing all of the hands in the pot. So maybe you put the authority over here, you say, whatever it is they can do, but keeping oversight with electeds.
Right.
Because it would be still through facilities and finance if that's what you did, but I think housing it somewhere would simplify that matrix.
Right.
Okay, so simplifying the matrix, keeping somebody there to house everything. So I like the spider web terminology, so we don't have everything everywhere, so it's housed somewhere.
Yeah, because the spider web is actually really good. That was one of the things that I remember in past discussions with folks is the organizational chart for COG. It doesn't really have the Parks Authority because it's not, but yet it is part, it's very confusing, so.
I will say, I do not like the spider web. I prefer the cold spaghetti analogy and trying to pull that apart.
Excellent. Patty, it's your choice.
You must be hungry, because you're talking about throwing pickles, you're talking about cold spaghetti.
Jeez.
Whichever one you want
I
to use.
have what I need, thank you.
Okay.
I really appreciate it, because, I mean, you know how you go back speaking as the voice of Ferguson, but without having some discussion and reading how everybody feels, it's hard. So, thank you.
Yeah, I still got to do a little more homework on this, but I do think there is some benefits in trying to simplify instead of just having more committees or more meetings, because in the end, it does sometimes involve a lot of staff time, and that's one thing that, you know, we learned early on and during COVID in my employer. When I'm in meetings for eight hours a week in a 40-hour week, that's a little bit of a problem. We could be a lot more productive. So, you know, I'd be in favor if there could be some consolidation of committees. Also, if not, what about joint meetings of committees? Does the authority necessarily need to meet alone while elected officials meet alone? Or is there opportunities where you can bring them both together and be able to cover the same workload, but in a more timely manner that wouldn't involve necessarily staff people having to go back and forth between committees and be that, just that ping pong. Well, this committee said no to this, or this committee said they needed more just bring everyone in the room and be able to have both meetings at the same time. And that's also helpful, I think, not just from a staff standpoint, but also understanding that many of our committee members and even the elected officials, we are taking chunks of personal time or even time from work to be in these meetings. So the least amount of meetings, but the more beneficial we can make each meeting, it could go a long way.
Right.
Yep.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, Patty.
Sure.
Thanks very much. Okay, we will move to item 9. Am I correct? Board member request discussion on the capital improvement plan 2025 to 2029 and the 2025 annual operating budget. And we will go to Mr. Hiller.
No comments, thank you.
That was easy.
Done. No, and I appreciate the opportunity, especially the learning curve here. So thank you, Madam Chair and Madam Manager, for the support and how to get an item added to the consent agenda. So I've learned a lot there. So aside from that, the item that everyone sees before them here is really to initiate, I'll read it here, the narrative, the discussion on the budget priorities and strategies for 2025 to 2030 capital improvement plan and 2025 operating budget. So really today, I just wanted to kind of discuss and for a consensus, a plan for developing the guidance through priority setting and development of a strategy. So tonight's really an initial conversation is what I'm looking for and hoping for to kind of lay the track for our next conversations around this, because long story short, besides the information that's provided there, as we heard earlier with the Gantt chart from the Finance Committee and knowing that we have the CIP coming up here as well as the budget time allocated already, coming up essentially, what was that, mid-June? There's a lot of work that has to be done before that and a lot of work that has to be done after that. So I'm trying to get the conversation started as early as possible on aligning those, not only aligning the things that we're trying to do here or that we'll be doing here in the CIP and the budget for Ferguson Township, but also thinking about the things that are going on in COG, coming up with, just general touch points, etc. But for tonight's purposes and the item you see before you, it's really getting a conversation started around the capital improvement plan and the budget for the 2025 to 2030 CIP, I should say, and the 2025 operating budget here. Have some ideas want to talk about. I know some of the previous presentation materials that have been included there had some really good background on some options that we would have going forward on how we want to handle budgets, etc. And I also want to share too, again, I'm just putting it all out there for discussion, that I truly feel the township is at an inflection point when it comes to the revenue coming in and the expenditures going out. And we have to start taking a hard look at what we can do here so that we don't essentially fall off some cliff and impact the citizens, the support that we provide to the citizens, and really keeping Ferguson Township a place that people want to move, live, and work in. So a lot to unpack there, but I'm hoping that we can have a conversation tonight about some of these items, and then follow on would be maybe prioritizing some items for staff and others to say, these are the important things, like we've seen at COG, public safety, that is a priority. Here, I would think public works as well, priority. And then what do we do with the other items there? So with that being said, I have other things I can mention too, but I wasn't sure, Madam Chair, how you wanted to proceed with kind of the discussion.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll just share a few thoughts, and I appreciate this coming forward and the board supporting having this on the consent agenda to give us an opportunity to get ahead of these conversations. And I think, I think the way you presented it is great, just to bring us all to a level set on the same page and reflect back on the budget discussions of the end of last year, and knowing the challenges that we were going to have to address this year. So being able to take this on now to begin these high-level discussions at this point will allow us to help inform the manager and departments as they're putting their CIPs and budgets together about where our priorities lie, about what strategies we're going to be supportive of, and trying to balance our budget to bring our expenditures and revenues closer together. I think, this is a shorter term discussion. So we're talking about this budget cycle this year for next year and this upcoming CIP, but this also plays into longer term financial planning. If we look to next year, when we've concluded the DCED analysis that we just got approved for, we'll be able to incorporate these discussions and that to formulate a plan to cover, the following 24, 36 months. And so there are no surprises. So there's a roadmap, a plan, and I think that's needed. I think it's healthy for us as a board to have these high-level conversations to get consensus, to see where everybody's at and what's going to be workable and supported. And so I think using that model of COG prioritization, I think, is great. I think balancing that with our strategic plan, and so being able to take our priorities from the strategic plan and really use touch points where we can see, tangible expenses. And so what are the funds, what are the line items we're looking at when we say safety, when we say, environment, climate. So really kind of trying to tie those priorities together. And then I think the next part will be a discussion on the strategies that we're willing to undertake. What are we solely looking at? Cutting expenses, so cutting services? Are we looking at increasing some in some places? Are we looking like we do with COG and a cap each year, or in different areas maybe, and maybe that's a result of the prioritization discussions. I think and what I was envisioning too was having kind of this presented by Matt tonight, and then being able to take this to another meeting if the board's supportive, and doing that prioritization exercise, that strategy exercise to see where we can build consensus. This also works really well in the timing with our leadership retreat, so that we will get that in-depth tutorial on the CIP and budget as tools, and to really be able to reflect back on previous budgets and CIPs and what our role is, and the managers. And so I think the timing is just fantastic. So thanks again for bringing this forward, and I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks for allowing me to.
Thank you. And again, what I'm finding with the Finance Committee COG and this discussion here is that essentially at the beginning of the year, it's the go fast button. Boom, somebody smacks it, and the next thing you know, the year's about to fly by. So any conversation we can have this evening around maybe, I'll direct folks' attention to the last page of the agenda, or second to last, where we talk about considerations with pros and cons. This was presented back in October 24th, and I did go back through some of the videos, et cetera, related to this. So knowing from my perspective, we're sitting at that point of transition or inflection. The items we see on the second to last page here, the options of doing nothing, a step-down approach, budget cuts, raising taxes, and a budget cap on specific funds. I just want to share kind of my thoughts that this is tax season, right? We're all doing our taxes right now, or we have somebody doing our taxes for us. And if we take the time to, flip over the page and do our own earned income, and we see Ferguson is sitting at the 2.35% compared to the other municipalities, which are there in the black and white. I think we all this time of year, at least I know I do, so I'll speak for myself, I go, ooh, okay, raising taxes for me is not an option. So I would be a proponent of looking at the other options that were presented back on October 24th. Maybe taking a couple of the items like the step-down approach and merging them with budget cuts or the budget caps. How can we be strategic on how we want to apply some of those options that we have? And that's really kind of, for me and my mindset, the conversation that has to happen with the board and staff, et cetera, to say what are maybe the line items, et cetera, in the CIP or the budget that can align to a step-down approach, or that can align to maybe they could be cut. Not to return in 2 or 3 years, but to be cut. Can we make hard cuts? I know in the October 24th presentation, there was this idea that, save now and pay later. Well, maybe sometimes budget cuts are just budget cuts in perpetuity. And there is no, coming back to the well, but we're not going to pay later. We're just not going to do something. We have to, in my estimation, take a hard look at some items here. Those items, we can look at the CIP line by line. We'll do that, of course, in June. But I think in advance, we want to at least familiarize ourselves with some of those options that we might want to apply, and maybe individually come up with areas that we see are important to us, not only from a prioritization standpoint, but maybe things that could fall into the area of, could we step this down? Could we potentially cut this? Could we put a cap on this other item? And then having a deeper discussion at our board meetings going forward or at work sessions, et cetera, around those items. So maybe it's a homework for us to do as well. I don't know, but I want to open up discussion and see what some thoughts were, if that's appropriate.
And before we go to discuss, I want to just kind of get a guideline, or just kind of frame it up a little bit so we know where we're going, so we're not trailing too far off, knowing that we're kind of presenting this for a future discussion. And so would a follow-up meeting with a prioritization exercise and strategies, would that be okay? And so that maybe that's the question we can propose to everybody, if that's, and to the manager, to see if that's something we could put together for the next time we discuss this. And so, so then I would absolutely agree with kind of opening it up and seeing if everybody's agreeable to that and some general discussion, but I just wanted to kind of know where we were going in the end.
Good. Madam Chair, I'll just also acknowledge too that I think the priority discussion, it'll be really valuable. It'll be productive. I think, certainly talking about it from the lens of interest in the budget is certainly where the board likely wants to begin that conversation. From the side of operations, based on adopted policy, we operate based on past board decisions. And so while you may have an exercise and you may prioritize your policy, that's really helpful. Like, we can get the strategic plan and we can itemize, I think there's what, like 8 buckets or 8 categories, like environmental and operations and these, you know, I would say that I would recommend that the board really talk through those policy decisions and then really think through, okay, well, what policies exist that the board might really want to, you know, you'll need to hold some public hearings to reverse, to repeal, hear public input, because I think to some extent, and we'll be able to talk a little bit about this at the leadership retreat, the expenses just within operations alone, you know, based on the level of service that we provide, based on the infrastructure that's been obtained and the staffing levels, collective bargaining agreements have these built-in costs that we've already kind of signed. So I think there's just that level of understanding, which again, the STAMP program is certainly going to benefit the board and with that final report, because they're going to come in and they're going to work with staff. They're going to review those collective bargaining agreements. They're going to identify the hidden cost, if you will. They're going to look at compensation and identify you know, long-term expenditures for pension actuary reports that the board never really has to be burdened with, right? Because it's really not in your purview. But those are costs that, you know, while you will want to identify options for whether it be a hybrid of a cap or a step down, all of these items are, it's a good approach. But knowing that I think starting with that priority discussion will be helpful, knowing that the operational cost will be a bigger conversation where we actually focus on the policies that need to be considered, discussed at a public meeting, and then ultimately repealed if that's the direction the board would like to go. So more to come with that report, with the consultants' participation. We hope to have a timeline that we can present to the board in the near future.
Great, thank you. We'll go back to Matt.
No, so I absolutely am advocating for that prioritization discussion, the strategy discussion at the next round. And I think from there, I would anticipate after that staff would maybe take a look at, you know, putting that priority list and strategy up against other items as well. Just hearing the board's view on certain things might be enough to empower, okay, here's where we know we can make some changes, step down, maybe apply the budget cuts, etc. So for me, this is that relationship between staff and the board working very closely together to go ahead and identify those areas moving forward, and then really coming up with something that works for everybody and works for the citizens, so that we never have to look at that idea of raising taxes, especially when, you know, again, this time of the year we see those numbers and we go, ooh. So, yeah, however we can proceed on that.
Yeah, if you want to open it up to discussion.
Oh, is that okay?
Yes,
I'd like to open it up to discussion.
Absolutely great.
We'll start at that end of the table. I don't know.
Yeah,
Ms.
that's fair.
Stevens.
Yeah.
No, I have nothing to say other than I like it. I am supportive of having another meeting where we prioritize. So yeah, I'm all for it. Let's do it.
I give a long look to Mr. Thompson. I don't.
Thank you, Mr. Heller. Just thinking back in some of my past experiences, one thing when it comes to this discussion, I like the prioritization. Some other things I'd be interested in would be feedback from staff. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you learn a lot from just that feedback. Are there areas in their jobs that are maybe more time consuming than usual that don't need to be, that we could, and I commend Ms. Martin, who has looked at a lot of those opportunities and seized a lot of those opportunities, and they've been very, very beneficial. Instead of just being like, I need another staff person, Ms. Martin has found areas where maybe something that took a staff person 3 days just learning a new process, they're able to now do it in like half a day. Mm-hmm. So I think What was that?
Our agendas.
Our agenda, yes, the agenda software was a very good one. Also, another thing, I'd be very curious to get feedback from staff. Have them identify areas of their jobs and how they give back to our residents. That's one thing that's one thing that kind of came up from a past career of mine in customer service. Well, how does this particular task benefit the customer? And interestingly, there was sometimes some task, it's like, yeah, that really doesn't benefit the customer. Do they even get any experience off? So being able to identify any of those that maybe can be eliminated or fine-tuned in a way that will give staff back more time, or even reduce operation cost.
All right. Mrs. Strickland, would you?
Yeah, I think I've shared what I needed, so, yeah.
Mr. Patterson? How was that? Yeah, thank you, Mr. Heller. So I being the, as I mentioned, I only had one problem with this region in my time here, so I'm not going to be helpful in prioritizing the needs here. I'm really going to need some help from residents of Ferguson Township, right? We need to hold these decisions together, and certainly I'm happy to take all the, visceral reactions as a result thereafter, but I need more people to tell me what we want to do. Because and I don't know, some of these areas, I don't know the west end area, I don't know the north side, but I'd like to understand what the priorities are there in those other areas. I know where I live well, so my neighbors, and so we know we definitely want, more pickup of those little witches' fingers off of our day. We do, more of that street cleaning type of things. It's a little seed pods that we've got a problem in our neighborhood. But things like that, well maintained. We don't have any, snow plowing issues. So for me, that's a positive and a thing we want to make sure goes well forever. I don't know that I've ever seen a pothole in Ferguson Township, so I want to make sure that it maintains. But maybe there's other areas that do see them, and so we need to just kind of recognize that. And do those neighbors care about the potholes where I've never seen them? So I do want more citizen feedback, a lot more, and feel free to inundate those on. Seeing that to inundate my email, because I don't know the answer, I don't know the priorities, and I don't want to pretend to know them. I want more citizen feedback, please. But so that was my number one. So number two, this council of governments that we fund regularly, annually, and for ongoing projects that everybody votes and says, go do this thing and spend here some money. I'd like to explore, I think we should make that a priority to explore the use of that in greater ways. That's why I asked the question about scaling this, this tree solution, and can we do that at a regional level? I don't know. But it's something that I plan to bring up at the next facilities committee meeting, like, hey, are we doing tree planting around? Is that something that we do regularly, and we can utilize a township and bring those dollars there, and it's a revenue source for the township to help out other townships. So just a thought there. But yeah, I think the COG has some utility in what we're thinking, in some of our thinking, and we should kind of, as we're in these committee meetings, start thinking with that eye toward how can this bring down costs for Ferguson Township? How can this, can we use this more such that we don't need as much within the township, this separate thing? I know codes is done at a regional level, so that's a good thing. And so how can we shift more of that into the COG and say, hey, COG, just go do this, and we can take the people from the township and put them in the COG, and they're doing it at a larger level. Just a thought, I don't know. And then thirdly, technology. Are there some uses of technology that allow us to get more efficient with what we have? Yes, you mentioned it. I just wanted, that was the third thing on my mind, and so I think that's all I have, Mr. Heller. Thank you.
Great points, especially, of course, working with the community and citizens to find out the priorities and getting the input there. So I think we can go ahead and, consider that, and I would look to maybe staff. Ooh, I'm sorry, Jen.
Well, and I do want to suggest that all of you kind of, as the board, be mindful about the duties and the responsibilities and the role, right? And so while I'm certainly happy to continue doing these evaluations and get a pulse from staff, that type of, ownership really stays at the manager level, but a report to the board, right? Or the STAMP program, to which we have engaged a consultant, part of their scope of work is to interview staff and to review the contracts and to do the presentation to the board for your consideration as you are doing policy decision. But I really want to just caution all of us in this discussion that we maintain that division of duty. And while I can appreciate the desire to want to collaborate with staff, it really can send some mixed signals and create some real difficult challenges for Ferguson Township.
And again, what I would point to too is we have to really consider this a very high level discussion at this point, because we're trying to look at this for this year's budget. And we did just update the strategic plan, had a lot of community feedback from that. So that's why I'm pointing to relying on that for us, using that as the stepping off point for our priority discussion, because all that engagement was just done. And obviously these are all public meetings, so anything we talk about, can have public feedback. But just to acknowledge, this is, like I said, a short term, look at trying to provide some overall framework for where the board is at in this budgeting process this year, so that we don't have conflict when we get the CIP, when we get the budget, so that there is some sense of, where is the board at in terms of these revenue issues and expenditure issues. So again, keeping it high level so that we can actually accomplish this year, and and understanding that DCED process will be that outside party being able to come in and look at some of the operations side.
Should be cautious too about some of the details in the conversation. Like I know that the end goal very well might be to cut services, but staff hears that maybe in a different way, right? And so as we're recruiting to fill positions, and as we are, kind of planning ahead, I don't necessarily want to create a situation where we have folks worried, like, is my department going to have services that are being cut? And so I just, again, taking it back to that high level, very much like our chair said, and having these, an analysis continue to be done, so the board can make these policy decisions, but, those details and that operational function, allowing that to happen, when it's, for example, discussing personnel and exec session, or when it's discussing levels of service, just keeping it at a high level and trusting that the manager will take that and then be able to, implement the policy as discussed by the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hopefully that's clarifying too.
And if I said anything that did any of what you said, I apologize. I really,
No, I think everything is fine. I'm cautiously thinking about all things right now, right? And so I can really, of course, I put that PowerPoint together for the board. So I'm very much in line with the concerns that are expressed here. But I also, that in part, that's also why, you have the charter, and we have these township policies and ordinances that define specifically the role and the duty. And so I think if you prioritize through an exercise, that will help inform me of some hard decisions that need to be made at an operational level and in discussions with our
department heads will be able to strategize and fulfill the overall goal of the policy setting that the board's making. But that level of detail, we probably just want to stay at that high level, and no one has said anything of that level of concern, but I'm also just acknowledging we probably want to just be mindful about that.
Right, and, and always, keeping that, operations and policy division in mind, we'll probably reiterate that at the next discussion so that we know where we're at and where we want to hold the discussion, and just keeping that 30,000-foot view and again, just trying to, have these conversations so we're working toward consensus so that when we're seeing these documents come through in June and October that we're, not, that there are expectations that are met. And so, we're.
And if I may, at a high level too, I would never advocate for reduction in force or anything like that that would impact people and their livelihood. Where I am, what I am considering with the options, or at least from my perspective, the idea of, as Mr. Thompson stated, finding efficiencies where staff can say, look, and if I look at the IT world, an IT help desk can only operate to about 65% capacity. After that, anything in addition, it's just going to bog them down, et cetera. So you keep it under 65%. Where is staff, and not to get into the weeds on this, but where there are opportunities where staff said, look, here is where we could actually free up some time, and maybe that is a cut somewhere. So again, it's that conversation. But again, I would never advocate for reducing the force in the township. So, just to, hopefully, didn't mean to scare anybody.
Right, I would just put it on the record as well, and I'm sure all of us can concur from campaigning and other talks that we've had with our residents. They really like the services that we offer. We hear that, we understand that. We'd like to retain great services, and also our staff does a great job. We appreciate everything that they do, and yes, value the input of all individuals that live and contribute to the service of the township.
So if I may, I think when we talk about having a priority or a list to prioritize, what are maybe our next steps to have a list, or say we're all reading off the same sheet of music? I don't know how maybe we proceed with that for our next discussion around what we're actually looking at, and look for somebody with deeper knowledge than me to help generate that list. Is that reasonable, or?
Yeah, I think we can work with the manager using the strategic plan again, to really kind of break that up and see, how do we feel about all these different items. And I think we can work with the manager to put something together for a future conversation. If that sounds good to the board, I'm comfortable.
Yeah, workload right now, I mean, it's something that I think we would want to do. I think, my part would be a recommendation to keep it simple, is just look at the strategic plan and look at those numbered sections. And again, environmental's coming to mind, best management practices. I look to staff to remind me of, financial resiliency is another one, right? And so just at a high level, the board could simply just, as part of the retreat, we could even set up some easels, and you could just put some sticker dots or something as simple as that.
Yeah.
Or you can do it individually as part of a board discussion. But I will say that a lot of the time that is spent right now that I have as part of the work plan is to really facilitate the stamp program as an add-on to the existing workload right now. So it's something that I'm happy to facilitate, but if you're looking to have that level of analysis done for our next board meeting, it could be, I would have a hard time giving you a date right now. But I could look and certainly bring back to the board at the meeting in March, maybe a proposed timeline as to when we would have that time and capacity to be able to provide that level of support outside of, like I said, like an easel exercise as part of the leadership retreat.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. And, if we have another discussion that, gets us a few steps forward, and then we save whatever is left for the retreat, to kind of, because that's we'll have to think about that, but, or, maybe a special meeting or something we have
Right.
pre-scheduled, that might be a better place to do it.
It's a great idea.
But just to understand that we can incrementally have these conversations, and, I'm happy for us to work together and talk with the manager and just, because I think we've got a good idea of what everybody wants to talk about next time, and just kind of just carry the conversation forward. This is just brought everybody back to where we were at the end of last year, and that was, I think one of the main goals of your item was to just kind of let's remember where we were at before we get too far down the road this year, and think about how we'll proceed. So, yeah, I'm happy with that, and we'll continue talking. Something will come back at one of these next few meetings to continue the discussion, and we'll kind of see where we're at that point.
The March special meeting, I think we have a presentation on the Coral Estate Acres update, as well as level of service for the stormwater fee. So we're probably looking at about 2 hours there, maybe an hour and a half there. We could try to condense. Staff will send out a the presentation on levels of service for the stormwater fee advance of the meeting. And so I'll look to see if the board would like to have this discussion as a special meeting. We could add it to that. Or it could be the next meeting. And I can add that to the agenda if the board would just like to continue the discussion. But I can work with the chair, and the chair can inform as to when to bring that agenda item back. Or
I'm thinking at a regular meeting, knowing our time constraints for our special meeting schedule. So, and even if it's not, we're at second meeting in February. So, maybe, I think second meeting in March or, early April, I think is fine for a continuation of that. And now we have all of our reference documents. This was the other, really valuable thing to have in here. We've got all this right here, so we can all, have a view of the budget meetings, of all these different documents that are in here. So there's no shortage of information for us to all educate ourselves with. So in the meantime, until the next discussion, there you go. Lots to read. All right, so is that
That's
good?
perfect,
Okay,
yeah.
and manager is good with that.
Yep,
We'll just
I have it on for the second meeting in March.
Great, we'll just pick it back up then.
I'm gonna say, this is light reading compared to that solar purchasing.
I agree. I agree with you on that.
2 slides.
Yep. So we will move to any communications to the board. Anyone would care to share? Yes.
Yeah, so I did have a resident reach out to me about the process or an interest in maybe revisiting the suburban park master plan as it relates to the horseshoe pits that are on the master plan, and would like to be very much involved in any discussions about that. I had forwarded that email on to you and the township manager, so anything about that, if there's anything about that process that needs to happen or can take place, or any other feedback that I can take back, I'd appreciate it, so. Thank you.
Very good. Anything, Jeremy? Anything, anybody? Not seeing it, okay.
I had 2 residents in Pine Grove Mills contact me about parking. One was letting me know that they have trouble seeing coming out of their driveway where people can now park now that the spots are painted on the road. So I had a conversation about that. And then another resident also contacted me about the request to maybe have reserve spots for homeowners, again, of those that have been painted on the road in Pine Grove Mills. So might be more to follow up on those.
Okay, thanks. Anything to share? Any communications?
I actually snuck one of my comms in one of the other subjects, so I think we're good. But
Okay.
COG, more efficient use of COG.
Good, all right.
So we're good.
Okay, if there is nothing else, there's a number of calendar dates noted with a lot of upcoming meetings on there. Thanks for including all of those. And if there's nothing else, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And I'll second, and we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Whoa, you just took it. Oh, sorry.